Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the sixth turn of the Shadowtech Goddess, subtitled Cat, Part 2, Chapter 2, The Shadowtech Goddess. When last we checked in on our heroes, Aram and Alesta, in the exotic city of Mons Eagle, they were informed that unfortunately their quests across the universe had created a spiralata, or a touching of several universes, and their boss, their hostess on their quest across the cosmos, the woman with the gun, the enigmatic lady that she is, lost her way and was quite despondent. And as they struggled to determine what to do to rectify the situation, there came a sinister knock at the door. And as they are the only people that appear to be alive in this city, at least in this timeline and in this phase of existence, that knock is rather ominous. So here we go. We get into the nitty-gritty of the story. Various questions have been posed earlier in the story on Cana with Cat now begin to be answered. So here we go. Chapter 2, The Shadowtech Goddess. Let's dig in. Should I answer that? Aram asked. The woman with the gun nodded with resigned despair. As Alesta consoled her, Aram got up and went to the door. He felt like he once had when he worked in Admiral Durlis' office at the fleet. There were always big, important-sounding knocks at the door that he had to answer. The Admiral often made tiny Aram his first and last line of defense regarding the door, and those important people waiting to pass through it and have at him. "If it's Admiral Pax, I don't want to see him. Make up a story," the Admiral used to say. Aram opened the door a crack and peeked out. Outside, an alluring woman in a shimmering black oilskin costume stood there, gloved hands placed on ample hips. She wore a silver helmet on her head that covered the upper part of her face, her ears, and the back of her head, giving her head a bullet sort of shape. Built-in goggles with glowing, eye-obscuring lenses protruded from the helmet, staining the doorway in purplish light. She wore an aggressive set of spiky black heels and a light cape at her back that seemed to ripple in an unfelt breeze and radiate galaxies' worth of hidden starlight. Aram wondered who she was. She seemed quite young and also ancient in the extreme at the same time. Though she looked human, there was something decidedly inhuman or other human about her. She pursed her lips. "You gonna let me in?" she asked curtly. Aram didn't know what to make of this. He felt on the spot and rather intimidated. He roasted in the purple light from her goggles. He used a technique he had learned at Admiral Durlis' office. When in the presence of an important and intimidating official, fixate on their teeth. Teeth, no matter who they belong to, are never intimidating. Sharks' teeth are frightening, bear and wolves' teeth as well, but not human teeth. White, pearly, well cared for, sometimes bearing a bit of previously eaten lunch. Aram had faced down many important sets of teeth in his day. He fixated on her teeth, which appeared to be perfect and unblemished. "May I ask who you are, my lady? Are you expected?" She pushed her way in, her heels clicking on the floor. "Me? I'm the idiot who sponsored this little disaster, that's who." She marched into the room and took control. "What is going on here? Why are we all sitting around, please? Somebody give me an update." There was confused, awkward silence. "Now!" she said in an unpleasant voice. The woman with the gun wiped tears from her face and gestured at the chart. We are at an impasse. Spiral ladder. We have no clear path forward. I have lost the way. The newcomer was clearly angry. You promised me you had all this worked out. I thought I had. Then what happened? The universes have diverged. A demon has lent its influence. The newcomer in black wasn't sympathetic. Didn't I warn you that could happen? I thought I would be ready for it. The newcomer held out her slender hand encased in black. Let me see. Give me the chart. Come on, give it to me. The woman with the gun sat there in Alesta's embrace. Aram selected the chart off the table and held it out. The woman snatched it away. She reviewed it, holding her free hand to her helmet as she surveyed the chart. Look at this mess. Really, I could get sent to the windage for this, you know? The intensity of her goggles increased. For those of you here who might not know what the windage is, it's the hell of the gods, okay? Okay? And it's not a pretty place. So guess what? If I go down, guess who I'm taking with me? Just guess. Alesta found her voice and spoke up. This woman is heartbroken. She has done all this out of love. Can you give her some peace? No, was the tart answer. Aram spoke up. I don't believe we've had the pleasure, he said. Who are you, great lady? The woman regarded Aram for a moment. She seemed rather annoyed, but then she smiled. I'm the Shadowtech goddess, she replied as she resumed surveying the chart. He was taken aback. You're the Shadowtech goddess? Yeah? Why? Well, I suppose I pictured the Shadowtech goddess to be... She put the chart aside with a crinkle of vellum and stared Aram down. To be what? To be more stern, more imposing, I suppose. She put her hands on her hips. What, do you want me to ugly up for you or something? Is that it? Sorry to disappoint you, little guy. I guess I thought you'd be a little taller, so there. Aram persisted. But if I may, the Shadowtech goddess tapped him on the head with the chart. Look. Enough questions, okay? You're lucky I like you, otherwise I'd have just reduced you down to floating molecules or something by now. I destroy things, right? That's what I do, yeah? Aram didn't know what to say. Alesta jumped in. I'd have thought a goddess to have more manners. The Shadowtech goddess huffed. Oh, is that what you thought? Listen, I'm a little upset right now, okay? I sanctioned this little party, and if it goes bad, I'm the one who's going to get in trouble for it. Big trouble. So cut me some slack. The woman with the gun was despondent. Just take me then and be done with it. Do not hurt my friends. They are innocent in this matter. Let me send them home first, and then do with me what you will. It would be my right to do so, wouldn't it? The Shadowtech goddess stated. I could just take you right now and start punishing you, couldn't I? Aram and Alesta doggedly stood by the woman with the gun's side. But we're not going home, Alesta said. We agreed to go on this quest to help our friend and to help this woman who has lost her love. I know how I'd feel if I lost Remy. I would cross any sea or any universe. I could to get him back. And so would she. We're not yet ready to quit. There must be some way to correct this problem. The Shadowtech goddess thought about it and looked at the chart again. Well, I suppose I'm a sap for puerile human romance. Suppose I can't just rip her up in front of you two, can I? Wouldn't be good form, would it? She tapped her helmet for a bit and held the chart out, noting the tangle of lines. So, what we have here is... She stopped in mid-sentence. Aram had poked her in the shoulder with his finger, apparently to see if she had corporeal form or if she was composed of some sort of netherworld goddess material. The Shadowtech goddess stared at him for a moment with indignation and then poked him back in the chest. Never poke a goddess, okay? She returned to the chart. Let's focus. So what we have here is a spiral ladder and a really bad one at that. Look, Look here. Sure enough, 3 universes have converged at this point, and a demon's crossed through, a nasty one too by the looks of it. It's dug itself in deep. See, here and here, these are cataracts it created to purposely confound anyone trying to dislodge it. She snapped her fingers at Aram. What's the name you got on your disc there? Aram consulted the disc to refresh his memory. Bella Thouser. She cursed inaudibly and adjusted her helmet. Figures. All right. She set the chart aside on the table and went to work, tracing lines, following intersections. Our demon has set up 2 cataracts to protect itself, here and here. Very harsh work. What's this? She turned her back to them and removed her helmet, revealing a dainty head of short, platinum blonde hair. Odd, diffuse light, possibly coming from her eyes, lit up the chart in a passing sublime wave of differing colors, giving it 3 dimensions in life. Aram was curious to see her face. He wanted to see it. He had to see it. He got up and walked around the table. Stop! The Shadow Tech Goddess held her hand up, not allowing him to see her face. No peeking. I wouldn't want you to fall in love with me or something. Gods and mortals, it never works out. Go, sit. Aram reluctantly resumed his seat. She turned her attention back to the chart. Yeah, look here. The demon has dug in. It got past our boy, the Kadar Gamane, and it killed his Murthig, knowing that would weaken any seeking to dislodge it. Alesta thought about that. What? The Murthig? In our past journeys across universes, the Murthig is always Lady Gwendolyn Apprentice. You mean Gwen is dead? Is that her name? The Shadow Tech Goddess asked. Yes, Gwen is dead. That will make sorting this out much tougher. Lady Gwendolyn Apprentice, the Murthig, the lady most often at Belle's side, was dead. Killed by a demon. Even though they were speaking of an alternate universe version of Gwen, even though the Gwendolyn they personally knew and called friend was back in their own universe safe and sound, the news of her murder in this alternate universe was crippling. They both grieved for her as the Shadow Tech Goddess worked. Without the Murthig, everything falls apart, the woman with the gun whispered. The demon has won. We must save Gwen, Aram said. She's dead, the Shadow Tech Goddess said. But can't we... The Shadow Tech Goddess turned, covering her eyes with her hand. Purple light squirted out between her fingers. There are no buts, Kay. The demon has taken her out, and it's not by accident or coincidence. It did it on purpose, to create chaos, to strengthen its position. Let's get past it and try to get this worked out. The Shadow Tech Goddess turned away from them and placed her helmet back on her head, situating it, covering her blonde hair. She rolled up the chart in a tight curl and walked to the door. She stood there impatiently. Come on then, let's go. Somebody open the door for me, please. Aram and Alesta stood, as did the woman with the gun. They were both in shock, grieving for Gwen. Dead. Killed by a demon. Where are we going? Aram asked, dejected. To get somebody who can correct this mess. I'm a goddess, not a map maker. Where are your manners? Get the door. Let's go. Aram opened the door. Tears streamed down his face. The Shadow Tech Goddess stepped through. She regarded him and did not seem unsympathetic. Thanks. Hey, you better perk up. Your friend is dead. It hurts. I get it. She's the Murthig. She exists in many other universes, safe and sound. Totally unaware of what happened in this universe. Take solace in that. I think we might be able to fix this problem, but I'm going to need the 2 of you to do it. And I'm going to need your best effort. We've got a job to do, so let's buckle down. Dedicate it to the Murthig, or dedicate it to your friend here with the gun, whose well-being depends on this. Come on, follow me. They exited into the corridor, followed by Alesta and the woman with the gun. They moved back into the main area of the castle, time-locked into utter stillness as always. Heels clicking with every energetic step, the Shadow Tech Goddess led the way into the main viewing chamber where the frozen king and queen sat in their chairs, towering over them, their frozen gazes stern and implacable. As they entered the room, a festival of warm, jewel-colored light stained the polished stone finery and the frozen forms of the king and queen. An archway at the far end of the room led to a mysterious area that they had never seen before. The Shadowtech goddess moved at a rapid pace, her cape shimmering. Aram and Alesta shambled behind, struggling to keep up. The woman with the gun did not enter the room with them. She held back. "Are you coming?" Alesta asked. She shook her head. "I can go no further. Take each other's hands. Hold tight and do not let go until you are told to do so. Promise me," she said with considerable concern. "Promise me you won't lose each other." The woman with the gun's warning had a grim note to it. Aram took Alesta's hand, holding it as tight as he could. "We promise." She embraced them one last time and kissed them both on the cheek. Holding hands, they continued on, following the Shadowtech goddess. Soon the woman with the gun was left far behind. "Come along!" The Shadowtech goddess took them into a maze of chambers, twisting and turning, both Aram and Alesta hopelessly lost. "Where are we?" Aram asked. "Mons Eagle." "Ages from where we started," she replied. "What does that mean?" She didn't reply. She glanced back, seeing they were holding hands. "Ah, good. Don't let go, no matter what." "Why?" Alesta asked. "You don't want to end up like your friend with the gun, do you?" They certainly didn't. They gripped hands tighter, fingers interlaced. They continued on, feeling uneasy, wondering where the Shadowtech goddess was taking them, and why it was so important they hold hands. Aram squeezed Alesta's hand as tight as he could, savoring the feel of her fingers and soft palm. Their hands were mutually sweating and going a bit numb, but they held on nonetheless. The sounds of the Shadowtech goddess's footfalls were hypnotic, tolling deep. Talk, talk, talk. Aram felt himself falling, lost in time and place, as if each step he took began in one age and ended in another. Alesta walked next to him, her footsteps making no sound. She seemed an eternity away, and getting farther with each step. She seemed to transform before his eyes into an elemental state, into an infant, into an alien creature, and a dying old woman many times. Her bearing and aspect also changed. He saw her in her familiar form as a pilgrim of Marion, shoeless, wearing her homemade clothes, and also as a regal countess of Dare, an explorer, a raging demon, a harlot, and a sinister, unprincipled woman angry with life and uninterested in him. He clung to her hand, not wishing to lose her as the woman with the gun had lost Belle. He said her name, and it echoed across time. "Alesta, Alesta, Alesta, Alesta." At long last they came to a door. The Shadowtech goddess waited for them, impatient. "Let her go. You're safe for the moment, but don't wander off. We've still a ways to travel." She threw the door open. Despite being told they couldn't release their grip, they continued to hold hands, their touch mutually comforting. Outside, the smooth, gem-like city of Mons Eagle spread out before them in glittering lavender sunshine. They were familiar with the layout of the city, only this time it was filled with people dressed in elegant clothing of varied colors, walking, laughing, going on about their day, the city full of sounds and sophisticated life. They walked down the jeweled street, passing the nook where they had enjoyed their meal in solitude not long ago. Ahead, through the crowds, was some sort of statue or artwork awkwardly placed in the center of the boulevard. Many people stood around it, taking it in. As they approached, they could make out detail in the statue. It was of two people lying prone on the street, limbs intertwined, either wrestling or in the act of having sex. Alesta's mouth dropped open and her face lost all color. "Holy creation, is that us? Rami!" Aram quickly moved Alesta past the time-locked forms of themselves having sex in the middle of the street. Though Alesta was mortified, Aram refused to be shamed or embarrassed. Damn it, he was proud. Let them take it in and look at all they wanted. Yet another bucket item that could be removed. Sex in full view of thousands. Ahead, the great castle loomed. Standing before it was a familiar figure, the woman with the gun, only she was a towering giant, hundreds of feet tall, and she wasn't wearing her usual flight suit. She was wearing an armored breastplate, a metal tunic that went down to her knees, metal boots, and a giant-sized sword 10 stories high. She stood solemnly at the entrance to the castle. They approached. "Stand aside," the Shadow Tech Goddess said, her voice reaching into the heights. Warily, the giant gazed down at them, her face partially obscured by the afternoon haze. "I was told not to admit you," she said in a massive, echoing voice. "And who are these with you?" "Don't you know us?" Aram asked, his voice tiny. The giant gazed at them solemnly. "No, and therefore you may not enter." The Shadow Tech Goddess became annoyed. "Step aside before I decide to get angry. Shall we add a few millennia to your sentence? Perhaps in less pleasant environs? I can think of several right off the top of my head." Her voice carried a hard edge of authority and power. The giant considered her words and then moved aside, the ground shaking as she did so, opening the way into the castle. The Shadow Tech Goddess marched in. As they passed the threshold, Alesta craned her neck back and spoke to the giant. "Don't you know us? We're here for you." The giant woman gazed down, considering her words. There were a great number of emotions hidden in her face. Weariness, sadness, loneliness, resignation, and unvarnished misery. It was as if, of all the inhabitants of this great city, she was the sole person in despair, a giant with giant-sized sadness. She said nothing in response. Aram and Alesta puzzled over this. The woman with the gun, a giant who didn't know them at all. Aram could still feel the kiss she had given him on the cheek. He had always suspected there was something more to her than she let on, that perhaps she, like the Shadow Tech Goddess, wasn't quite human. Aram was good at listening and piecing together little bits of disjointed information, by themselves all innocent and inconclusive, but when organized and considered together, they formed a telling picture. The woman with the gun had said it herself in passing. "The price I've paid, the ages of nameless servitude, the loneliness." Their hearts ached for her, but time was of the essence. The Shadow Tech Goddess kept them moving at an impossible pace. Inside, the castle was clogged with people milling about the central corridor, the laughs, the smiles, the clinking glasses, and poured spirits, as if a great party were in progress. The misery of the lonely giant outside irrelevant. The Shadow Tech Goddess pushed through the people, marching through the crowds as if they didn't exist. At the entrance to a grand ballroom, clashing in noise and color, she stopped. "Follow me," she said. "We are nearly there, but we've ages to cross. Time is not linear here, I'm sure you've figured that out by now, and it is easy to get lost. As before, hold on to each other until we exit the chamber, right? Do not become separated, and do not lose me. I cannot help you once we enter. You must follow me. Are you ready?" She didn't give Aram and Alesta time to respond. "Now, let's go." The Shadow Tech Goddess waded into the ballroom. Hands locked together, Aram and Alesta followed, doing their best to keep up. The floor was clogged with people. It was a cacophony of noises, smells, and other sensations. Her senses were assaulted at every turn. Fine orchestral tunes piped out of the wings of the room, only to morph into brash, ugly roars of schizophrenic noise, and then back again to pleasing note. They smelled fine perfumes, sweet scents of powder pastries, primal smells of pine forests and dirt, thick, sanguine odors, smells of sex and rotting offal. People were everywhere, some dancing, some aimlessly milling about. Most paid them no mind, though some laid hands on Alesta's merry garments, offering her drinks and food, trying to divert her attention, some trying to pull their hands apart. Aram held on tight, gripping Alesta with a sure hand. As they waded into the central section, people kept getting in the way, the slender black form of the Shadow Tech Goddess momentarily vanishing in the crowd, and then re-emerging a bit farther away. It was like being a ship in an angry sea of bright fabrics, varnished hair, cloying perfumes. Waves of strange faces and blank stares crusted in the din of mashed-up conversations, with the black solidity of the Shadow Tech goddess moving into the distance, vanishing and reappearing and vanishing again. Aram held on to Alesta with all his might and pulled her along. "Remy!" she cried out in distress. "Hold on to me," he said. He felt a gentle tap on the shoulder. It felt like being licked by a cat's tongue, the sensation of the touch quite shocking. Standing to his left was an attractive woman wearing a lacy blue suit of flattering contours. She wore a veiled hat, the veil covering the right side of her face. She stood there with an inviting smile. "Hello," she said in a pleasant voice. "Are you Lord Aram?" "I am." She giggled and curtsied. "I was told to expect you. Please, this way. I will lead you." Aram was hesitant. The Shadow Tech goddess said to follow her. She smiled and shook her head. "That woman is not the Shadow Tech goddess. Don't let her fool you with her lies. Come, follow me. I will take you to the proper place." Aram didn't know what to think. The woman stood there in a pleasant fashion. "Who are we seeing?" "Fiddler Crow. He is the person you seek, the man who can help correct the matter troubling you. He's very wise, but difficult to find. Come, I am here to assist you." The woman had a marked air of authority about her. The woman took Aram by the hand. She tugged on him. "And, who are you?" Aram asked, trying to keep his wits. He tried to pull his hand back, but couldn't. Her grip was impossible. "My name is Bella Thouser," she said. "Bella Thouser? The demon? Come, he shouldn't be kept waiting." Aram felt his grip on Alesta slipping, like she was a kite at the end of a long string, slowly being pulled from his grasp by the relentless wind. "Alesta!" He noticed the people around him converging, closing in. He saw the same woman over and over again staring at him, smiling, eyes wide, mouths open, hands grasping, leering. One of them pulled her veiled hat away, revealing a gruesome sight. The left half of her body was flesh. The right half, however, was a complex, well-made machine fused right down the middle to her left half with a roll bead of flesh, as if it had been welded on. Servos flashed, lenses opened, refracting angry blue light. She opened her mouth. A tongue made out of knitted chainmail rolled out over synthetic lips. With a hard crunching of bone and sinew, she elongated in height until she towered over them. All the women closed in on Aram and Alesta, hands raised, metal and natural claws bared, cloth ripped. Bella Thouser's robotic arm was studded with knives, knobs, nails, and serrated surfaces waiting to bite into his flesh, as if her machine half had been purposely conceived to inspire fear and inflict pain. A line of tiny monitors splashed with her leering face were built down the length of her arm, all mouthing synchronized, dire words. The glimpse of the image in the monitor screens froze Aram's heart. One half of her face, Bella Thouser. The other half was Gwen. Gwen's face fused with hers. She mouthed the words, "I called out for you, but you didn't come. Where were you, Aram? Aram! Aram!" "Come along," she rasped. "I've things to show you." The women closed in, ready to take them. Someone came in and pushed the horrid ghouls away, giving Aram and Alesta space. Aram pulled himself together and re-established his grip on Alesta's hand, reeling her in, holding her tight. There was the woman with the gun, wearing her armor and knee-length tunic, shrunk down to normal size, keeping the demented crowd at bay with her sword. Toy soldier, you can't stop us," the mass of Bella Thousers jeered. They moved around her sword to get at Aram and Alesta. The woman with the gun's tawny hair came to life, billowing in a sandy, cyclone-like cloud, rotating with fury around them, holding the masses back. Her power uncoiled and was on full display. Such strength she had, hidden from their view all this time, content to present herself as a mere human. The Bella Thousers were no match for it. Those that tried to pass through the cyclone were scoured into nothingness. Flesh eroded to skeleton, metal flaked away, linkages exposed, circuits sparking. She gazed at Aram and Alesta with reverence and hope. "What are your names?" she asked. "Aram and my love Alesta," he replied. "Love?" she said. "We don't know your name. You've never told us." She permitted herself to smile. "My name is Lily." Saying her name seemed to give her joy. "Ages have passed since I last uttered it. I have a love, too." She pointed at the far end of the room. "Go. You said you were here to help me, so I place my faith in you. Help me." Aram and Alesta scurried across the floor, the crowd of Belathausers all identical, cawing and reaching through the wall of sand, unable to breach it. Lily's last words to them resonated. "Help me." They entered a corridor. The Shadow Tech goddess was waiting. "I told you to keep up. Look what almost happened. That woman, half robot, she tried to seize us." "That's Belathauser. That's who we're up against, trying to end this early. Come on, we're almost there." And with that, we reach the end of Chapter 2 of the Shadow Tech Goddess. Aram and Alesta, following a woman claiming to be the Shadow Tech Goddess, have undergone a long journey through the city of Mons Eagle. Not necessarily long in distance, but long in concept, long in time and in ages. They've crossed ages of different times, trying to get to a specific point. Where they're going, where the Shadow Tech Goddess is leading them, is still unknown. As for me personally, this part is my favorite part of the book. I like how this came out. I like the wonder of exploring new places. I love to world build. That's one thing I get a lot of good commentary on, is being able to create a world without deviating from the plot too much. And that's good. You got to keep the story rolling. You have to fight the urge to get into that exploration mode, into looking through all the nooks and crannies of this mythical world that you've invented in your head. You just show enough of it that it paints a decent picture on the page, yet keeps the plot flowing. Aram and Alesta taking a long journey. We finally learned a little bit about the woman with the gun. In previous books, you don't really learn too much about her at all. You finally see her power uncoiled. She is, as we find out in Book 7, the Shadow Tech Goddess, she is quite powerful, not quite human, and her name is Lily. It's actually Lillian of Gamboa, who had pretended to be just a woman for a long time. But that's a whole nother story. To see more on that, see Book 7, the Shadow Tech Goddess. We will stop there as things are unfolding nicely. We'll find out next week where the Shadow Tech Goddess, if that's who she actually is taking Aram and Alesta. It was a pretty dangerous mission, pretty dangerous journey. The demon Belathauser almost got him, but fortunately the woman with the gun was there to protect them. We will continue at this time next week. This is Ren Presents. I'm your host, Ren. Peace out.